Continuing with First Corinthians, we saw where he wrote Corinthians because of problems they were having, and he also wrote them about they had sin in the camp, they were broken up in divisions, they had fornication going on, even with a man that was sleeping with his father's wife, or so we had all kinds of problems going on, and then they're puffing themselves up. I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos. They were leaning on some third party between them and Jesus, and he pulls them back to how he's just a man, that he's just trying to do the gospel. He talks about, he brings them back down to earth. Why are you so puffed up? I mean, if anybody had a right to be puffed up, it would be him. Yet he came in with the meekness. He came in not with great words. He didn't come in with flowery statements and all kinds of verbose teachings. He was very simple. He tells them what to do. He gives them commands so they can keep busy. He tells them in 6 to flee fornication, that fornication is against your body. Again, in a Greek time, much like today, fornication was just this activity that you did. They didn't really see it as anything against their own body. Here he even takes it a step further as the church, as we are one, are you bringing a harlot into our oneness? So there's a big problem there. He also talks about marriage, and he gives his views on it. He also talks about it from a church point of view. If you're in a state, stay in that state. If you're not, you can seek to be in another state. Just make sure that you're worshiping the Lord. He talks about circumcision being nothing and non-circumcision being nothing. Do not let these physical things say that you're better or worse than anyone else. And then he talks about virgins. If they can stay like they are, fine. But if they seek to be married, okay. And he talks about all these things about standing fast with your beliefs, but make sure that your beliefs are current with what he's been teaching. He talks about worshiping idols and how they are nothing, but in chapter 8, if it causes your brother to stumble, if you have meat and you know it's from an idol and your brother knows it, eating that would cause his faith to stumble, then don't eat meat. Chapter 9, he talks about, am I apostle, but am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Are not yet you my work in the Lord? And if I am an apostle, yet the seal is mine. Mine answer to them that examine me is, can we not eat anything? Can we not drink anything? Don't have a power to lead around with my sister or with a wife, as the other apostles do. He even says that Cephas had his wife go on his journeys with him. And he talks about them working, and when they're teaching, it's like working in a vineyard. Doesn't those that work in the vineyard get to eat from the vineyard? He's making the point that if they're ministering to the church should also in turn take care of them. Sometimes we get into religions to where you feed me, thank you, you feed me, thank you. There's not a lot of reciprocity where you reciprocate. The idea here is that there should be this connection, this life going on between the minister and the church. He talks in chapter 9 that we have sown into spiritual things. Is it a great thing that we greet carnal things? Should we not do that? As others are partakers of this power over you, shouldn't we also? He's talking about when you hire someone to work for you, and shouldn't they also partake in the labor, in the fruits of their labor, either through wages, or maybe you pay them in the grapes, you pay them in the olive oil or whatever, that they have this wage. Shouldn't we also? But he says, do you not know that they which minister about the holy things live by the things of the temple? How much more should they? So they should be taken care of by the church. And this is something new for the church. Maybe didn't think about the fact that, we need to be taking care of those who are taking care of us. But I've used none of these things, neither have I written these things that were done unto me, for it had been better for me to die than any man should be gloried. That the idea that it's better for me to die than others would glory to say, I'm a supporter of Paul. Paul couldn't exist without me. Look how great I am. It's not that. It's just the opposite. You should be willing to step in and help as one brother helps another. For this I'm willing, I have a reward, but if it's against my will, the dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me. I'm here to do the gospel, whether it's my will or not. For what reward is it then when I preach the gospel, I make the gospel without charge, that I abuse not my power in the gospel? My power in the gospel is not to do it for money, not so that I can receive from you, but that power is the gospel, is that I do it for free. And though I be free from all men, yet I've made myself a servant to all, And unto the Jews I became a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. And he's not saying going back to Judaistic worship, but I will talk with them like Jews. I will talk with them from the Torah. I will show them Christ from their works, that I might gain them. To them that are outside the law, them being not without the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might gain them. So if I'm with non-Jews, I talk to them as non-Jews, that I may get them. To the weak I am weak, that I might gain the weak, and I make all things of all men, that I may save some. His goal is to save some. His goal isn't to be right. His goal isn't to show how smart he is. Don't you know that those that run the race, but only one receives a prize? Run to obtain. For every man that strives in the mastery is temperate in all things. You have self-control in anything that you strive in to be a master of. This includes, athletics or any kind of musical ability. That's to obtain an incorruptible crown. But I run, and if I run like those that beat the air. You can imagine someone running and they're just beating the air. They're not going anywhere. But I keep under my body and bring into subjection, lest by any means when I have preached to others, I myself might be a castaway. He's not talking about losing his salvation. He's talking about not being able to share the gospel. So again, he's talking about how there are those that beat the air, but I beat myself into submission. Moreover, brethren, I would not have you ignorant how that our fathers were under the cloud. He takes them back to an Old Testament Bible study, that they were all in Moses, and they ate the same food, and they drank the same water from the same rock. And now he says that rock is Christ. We're like them. They had one law, they had one master, they had one person leading them, they had one place of succor, they had one place where they got their food, one place where they got their water and their protection. And many of them that were not pleased, and they got overthrown in the wilderness, that these things became our examples, that we would not lust after evil things. Look back and see what they did. If you want to know what you should do, look at the template of those who did wrong. That template is still in effect. He talks about how they lusted. Don't be idolaters like them that sat down and got drunk. Let us not commit fornication, as some has committed, and fell in one day 21,000. We will not tempt Christ, as some have tempted and have been destroyed by serpents. Remember when the fiery serpents came in and they died by that. Of all these things that happened unto them are in examples, and they are written for our admonishment. Therefore let him that thinketh he stand be careful lest you fall. There needs to be some humility here. And there's no temptation taken to man, but God is faithful, and he will won't suffer you to be tempted beyond you are able, and he will provide a way of escape. So he's talking about how that you act like you're tempted into something that you don't have the power to get away from. He says you do have the power. You have the power to get away from it. Flee idolatry. I speak as a wise man. Judge ye what I say. The cup of blessing which I bless, is it not the communion in the body of the blood of Christ? For we being many take one bread and one body, and we're all partakers of that one bread. Brings back to the oneness. Behold, Israel after the flesh, are they not eaten of the sacrifices, partake of the altars? Yet that the idol is anything of which is offered to a sacrifice of idol, is it anything? It's nothing. People think that, they get caught up in their worship. And that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, and sacrifice to devils, and not to God, and I would not that you would have fellowship with devils. Be careful of idolatry. It creates fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. We will be careful where you're fellowshipping. Be careful about the oneness. Many times today we will go into a club, or into a secular club, and go into an area, and you're expected to participate in what they're participating in. And you can't do two things. You can't be of, the devil's house and the Lord's house. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Do we provoke the Lord of jealousy? All things are lawful to me, but they're not all expedient. In other words, legally I could go hang out with these devils, but it's not expedient that I do so. See the freedom there we have? The freedom to say no to the things that are bad for us, even though there's no law against it in Christ. People often say in Christ, well, Christ didn't say I could do it, but look at chapter 10. It tells you to look back and see what sin did to people. See how they get swept up. See how they got carried away. You can lose your walk. as a Christian, you might not lose your salvation, but you can lose your walk, lose your worship, lose your witness, lose your ability to glorify God because people will see who you are. What's most important to you? But no, that no man seek his own, and every man another's wealth. Whosoever is sold in shambles that eat, ask no question for conscience sake. So if you go out to eat and someone offers you food, don't ask, well, did that come from the idols? No, go ahead and eat it. But if you find out, he says, that it did come from an idol, then you could say, no, I don't want to do that. Because then the person knows. You know, that's a different thing. Because it's not the meat that's anything. It's the same meat. But it's what it's been dedicated to and what the other person thinks. We are to keep an eye out, again, for witness sakes, about what others think. And he's drawing this conclusion here to an early church who was getting caught up in the do's and the don'ts and the wills and the won'ts, and you're doing this and you shouldn't do that, and judging one another harshly on how they're living. And he's saying, get back to the spirit of it. Get back to Christ. And remember, they didn't have much of a Bible at that time. Like I said, here we are. If anything, they may have had Galatians, maybe one of the Thessalonian letters, maybe both. They might have had the book of James, might have had Mark, and might have had Matthew, but that's all they had. So meant should the understanding that we have, we realize that these people were just really learning. This is brand new to them. If any man said this is offered to an idol, eat not for the sake of, for their conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Conscience, I say, not mine, but the others. For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of when I give thanks? Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do to the glory of God. Give thanks for everything, even if you're given food. But if it'll hurt the conscience of another, don't do it. He's making this pretty simple. Be followers of me, as I am a follower of Christ. Now I praise my brethren that you remember in all things, keep the ordinances as I delivered to you. Do not make up new ordinances. He wrote them epistle. He taught them. He tells them about a woman here, and he talks about women's role in the church. People don't like to hear this, but here, and they became very egalitarian. The women would start taking over, the women would start controlling, the women would be doing this, and the men would kind of fall back. We see that. I've had women say that men will be talking in a Sunday school till the women start talking, and then they all shut up. And somehow, we even had this woman, you know, that had married this other guy. And even we had even other books that talk about busybodies in the church. But he says, as a woman, every man prays and prophesies with his head covered, dishonors his head. We don't want to be dishonored. We don't need a covering because we have God. But they are supposed to be our covering. We are supposed to protect them. We're their covering. Wearing their long hair or wearing that shows a sign that someone is protecting me. Someone is watching out for me. Someone has me, my best in mind. And so a woman is not covered if she is, or she is shorn, it is a shame. She's saying, I have no covering. I have no one taking care of me. And that day, if you could, you should have a brother or an uncle, you should have a husband, or you should have a father, you should have some man taking care of you somehow. Now that's why they were trying to take care of widows. And there were even laws in the Old Testament about widows. Women need men to care for them that way, to protect them and provide, but also to help them to understand. It's not that they're stupid, but it's given the responsibility of men to rightly understand and rightly proclaim. So a man doesn't need to cover his head, but a woman does. For it says, a man is in the image of glory of God, but the man is the glory of the woman. See, he is in the image of glory of God. He looks beautiful to God, but she looks beautiful to him. She is his glory. When you take a woman around, it makes you look better. You know, she is your glory. You look better with her. God sees you. You're his glory, but she's your glory. That's a good thing, to give you something that makes you look better. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman was created for man. The woman was created to be a helpmeet to men, not superior, not inferior, but a helpmeet. An equal, but not an egalitarianism, not in a 50-50 partnership. He is responsible. For this cause, the woman shall have a power over her head because of the angels. Once again, you get the idea. You get the idea that fallen angels will come to women that aren't protected. And I say this very carefully, because that women ought to have power over her head because of the angels. You get the idea that back in Genesis 6, these women that were connected to these fallen angels did so many of them willingly because the men were not protecting them spiritually, being their spiritual head, being their cover, being their protector. So you get that's a very thing here. Judging yourself, it is comely for a man to pray unto God uncovered. Doth not even nature teach you that if a man hath long hair, it is a shame to him, but a woman hath long hair, it is her glory. Again, nature makes it very simple. Women look better with long hair. They look beautiful. If any man be contentious, we have no custom, neither churches of God, but I declare to you, I praise you, not that you come together not for better, but for the worse. If you have any contentiousness, it needs to be taken out. If any man be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches. We don't have a law for contentiousness. You just, you work it out and get rid of it. For now I declare to you that I praise you that you come not together for the better, for the worse. For first of all, that you come together in the church, I hear that there are divisions among you. These divisions will create contentiousness. And there are even heresies that they that have been approved may also manifest in you. When you come together for one place, this is not to eat the Lord's supper, but eating where everyone taketh before another, one is hungry and one is drunken. The idea they came together for these fellowship offerings, fellowship meals, but some would have food, some would not. Some would be sober, some would be drunk. And it was very simple, similar to the bacchanals that the pagans would have. They didn't know, though. They didn't have a 1 Corinthians to teach them. Now, you would think that they would know in the spirit not to make this a lewd thing. But they were making it lewd. What? Don't you have houses to eat in and drink in, and you despise the church of God and shame them to have not? What shall I do to you? Shall I praise you? I praise you not. For I have received of the Lord that which I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night when he was betrayed, took the bread. And this is again a retelling of the Last Supper. He brake it and said, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do it in remembrance. In the same manner he took the cup. This is the cup of the New Testament and in my blood, which you do as often you do it in remembrance of me. See, they weren't doing their communion in remembrance of God. They was just a celebratory feast, and that made it difficult. It was bad. It was unfocused. Therefore, whoever eats this bread and drinks this cup, and it says this, the cup that's been dedicated to the Lord as a remembrance, but you're doing unworthily, is guilty of the body and the blood. And that's not a good place to be. But let each man examine himself, and let him eat that bread and drink that cup. It's got a this and a that to it. We're talking about this cup and we're talking about that cup. That he might eat and drink unworthily, eateth, drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. But from this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. So if you want to know an unhealthy church that's doing this, they have many weak, many sickly, and many are sleeping. Many are dying or dead. But if we judge ourselves, we should not be judged. For when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. The Lord will chasten you, or he will condemn you with the world. So again, where are the saved people and you have unsaved people? You would have a lot of people wanting to be in this church. A lot of people wanting to be with these nice people who will feed you and take care of you. But where's the Lord in that situation? Where's the Lord in this sociological? And then again, when they can be like the world and having these fellowship feasts, which were a little bit like, bacchanals, where people get drunk or they're gluttons, where the poor are not taken care of, and then they have people in there who are committing fornication and everybody knows it. You see the problem. There wasn't a sense of sanctification, a set apartness, and that's what he's trying to get them to do. Therefore, brethren, when you come together to eat, tarry one for another. And if any man hunger, let him eat at home, that you don't come together unto condemnation, and the rest I will set in order when I come. So he's going to straighten this out more. He's hoping to come to them. But he's going to finish this letter and then write them another. I don't know for sure if he ever got back to Corinth. He might have. He has other journeys coming up. But here he's laying it out clearly. This is how you need to handle the Lord's Supper. This is how you need to handle your worship service. This is where women fit into the ideologue. Here's men's responsibilities. and we're trying to push away from fornication, idolatry, and all of this stuff. He's been a busy boy here, and he's got a little bit to go, but he's got some really good things coming up in 12, 13, and 14 will be very pinnacle. It's something you'll hear hundreds of sermons on 12, 13, and 14, and some really good stuff. He doesn't leave it on a low note. He will take this up to a high note when he's done.